This episode of the Unwashed Asses is brought to you, as always, by patreon.com/0and09. If you dig what I do here, if you dig what I do on my other shows, or on the website with the comics and the commentary, and oh shit, I can't make that joke anymore, he's a rapist. Then head on over to the Patreon. Become a patron. $1 a month, that's all I ask. Keeps the shows running, helps make them better. And then for the love of God, please help me stop working so much overtime. Make this a job where you get more shows, more content, better quality by heading to patreon.com/0and09. And of course, Podcast Awards 2017. Unwashed Asses is up for an award. We can sweep the mature category. Sweep with just one show in one category, but sweep nonetheless. No thanks. Sorry. Fuck it, that just threw off my mojo here. Ooh, it's foggy out. Let's start the show. So, as you can tell by the lovely degraded audio quality here, we're doing another midnight recording. This is the Unwashed Asses, episode 24, recorded July 21st, 2017. It is now 1:30 in the goddamn AM. Goddamn AM. Tired. Worked this morning, worked this night, another 8 a.m. to 1 a.m. shift bullshit. I gotta work again tomorrow. 8 to 7, then we're doing Friday Night Smite with Woody and Mezzy. Maybe a little grumpy sourpuss. So, I've been promising the Midnight Express for a few weeks now, and it didn't pan out last week because if you listen to Unwashed Asses, and I got the day off, so I didn't have to be driving home at 1 in the morning, so it doesn't really pan out. On top of that, I have this really bad habit of I notice the more tired I get. I've recorded at least 3 of those shows and have not put them up and will not put them up because either A, I'm completely incoherent, there's some babbling and me trying to piece together what I said, or I spiral into this descent of just pure sadness because I talk about shit I shouldn't talk about and I can't do that. So we got to stay on topic here, we got to stay on point. Fortunately, we got a few things to talk about that we can just kind of ramble. First and foremost, the voice recorder app that I use to do this decided, hey, we had ads before. They were non-intrusive, though. They'd be at the bottom of the screen and certainly wouldn't pop up when you were deleting or trying to record something. That shit's changed. Apparently, update rolled out that now, you'll get that fucking bullshit Mobile Strike or Final Fantasy 15 build the tower, defend our village bullshit. And it's frankly quite fucking annoying. So, because I sell my information to Google and, value money over privacy, I had the funds in the old Google wallet there to go ahead and pay for the full version, which is fucking $2.99, $3 damn dollars. Which I mean, in the long run, it isn't bad. I've liked the app. It does what I need it to, and it has a lot of really nifty features. I don't like it when they start integrating shit where it becomes more pervasive or intrusive. It's kind of like when you go to a website and the fucking thing starts either A, automatically playing video or some type of sound, and you can't figure out which tab or which part of the site's doing it to close it down. Which, I mean, if you don't have an ad blocker installed by now, then it's on you, but that's a philosophical debate for later. So yeah, it was upsetting that I was going through and deleting old recordings before I recorded tonight, and yeah, they got that Final Fantasy app pop up, and let me just say, hold on, sorry, gotta wet the old whistle there. What I was complaining about during the second ad read there was I had the app open, I was clearly recording, and then I get another pop-up, despite being on the pro version, saying, "Would you like to rate our app? Would you please rate it 5 stars because we really want it to be 5 stars?" Don't fucking have your goddamn like me thing pop up while I'm actually doing shit with the app. Like, I get it if I'm playing a game or something else that is not important, but too many times have I had voice recorders fuck up on me, and I'm very paranoid about it happening again. So please don't have shit pop up while I'm actively recording. But the Final Fantasy 15 app is what the fuck? So, wasn't planning on going off on this tangent, but fuck it. It's 1:34 in the morning, and what else am I going to do until I get home? So, Final Fantasy as a series has really lost me over the years. Oh fuck, you know what? We're gonna dig extra deep. I got a half hour to fill here. We're gonna buckle up, kids. This is gonna get boring. No, it's lightning and fog, and swear to God, I'm gonna drive right by Bray Road, and there's gonna be a werewolf pops out, bam, bites old Jack Burton, turns him into a gold-darn werewolf. But yeah, seriously, I'm gonna be driving by Bray Road in just a few minutes, where there's a werewolf. It's been cited for years. They made a terrible sci-fi movie about it. Not like, science fiction. Sci-fi, the channel that they now call themselves Syfy. S-Y-F-Y. There's some fog rolling around and some thunder and lightning going on in the distance. It's very picturesque. But no. So many yawns. So Final Fantasy was one of the first game series I got into very heavily. In fact, it was Final Fantasy VIII that really turned me on to gaming. It was, up until that point, I had Super Nintendo and then just the N64, and would get a handful of games here and there, but I wasn't like super, super duper into gaming, where I was like, oh, this is clearly my primary hobby. I'm going to devote as much time and resources into this as I can. Just, one of those other things you did. Of course, action figures and comics take up a lot of the time, as well as, drawing and all that fun stuff. But Final Fantasy VIII, I remember being in a theater. I don't remember which theater, not the theater, but which movie we were going to see, but it was 1999. And this was when theaters had just recently introduced the trend of actually playing commercials before the trailers. Nowadays that's just pretty common. Sometimes you'll get commercials mixed in with the trailers. But back then, this was new. It was like, what the fuck is this shit? You have like a Honda Odyssey commercial, and of course the Coke commercials. This one was for Final Fantasy VIII. And it was one of their FMV, they fully rendered it out, and at the time it looked fucking stunning. Like, holy shit, this is a great looking game. This is, PlayStation 1 era graphics. And it was just stunning. Like, holy shit, this looks awesome. Only problem was, I didn't have a PlayStation. And I know you longtime listeners are going to say, well, Christian, this seems to be a trend for you where you constantly want games on the platform that you don't own, which also happens to always be PlayStation. So, I get what you're saying. I need to, abandon the Xbox platform and just go with PlayStation here on out. And you might be right. You might be right. Cop would not turn his brights off. Dick. And you know what? I might next generation. I don't know. I'm so deeply entrenched on Xbox. It's hard for me to say, oh, I'm going to abandon this platform and move to the one that has all the goddamn exclusives, apparently. But no, this was after Squaresoft, before they merged with Enix. They had ended their love affair with Nintendo and were moving over to the PlayStation. Final Fantasy VII had come out a few years earlier, and everybody was fucking raving about it. It's what kind of brought JRPGs onto the map, and everybody got into them. But Final Fantasy VIII was the one that caught my eye, and so what I ended up doing is I made a bargain with my grandma that, hey, since my birthday and Christmas are kind of close together, what if I give up both of those holidays? She may have gone in with my dad on it as well, and okay, I'll give up all these presents if I just get one big present. And that one big present was going to be the PlayStation. And, sure enough, that gamble paid off. I had to wait until Christmas. Or did I get it for my birthday? I might have got it for my birthday and just didn't get anything on Christmas. But I had gone out and I had purchased Final Fantasy VIII on my own before I had the console. I do remember that because the game came out September 9th, 1999, so it was 9/9, all the nines. And before I could play it, I was doing just extensive, any scrap of information that I could get, I was just devouring it. So reading reviews and previews of the game. When they started coming out, I was reading the strategy guides. During study hall, I'd pull out the Game Informer, and what wasn't Game Informer? I think it was either PSX Magazine or Tips and Tricks. And was reading the Final Fantasy VIII walkthrough. And so by the time I actually got to play the game, I had a good handle on what was already happening. And got the PlayStation, and of course just devoured it. Final Fantasy VIII is... I know it's not technically the best game out there, but it's by far my favorite. Because it made such a strong impression on me as far as gaming was concerned. It's what really got me into it, which is the whole point of the story. So from there, I went backwards and got Final Fantasy VII, but playing the sequel to a game where it's better looking, and I like the draw system. I know everybody fucking hated it, but I loved it because I didn't use magic in the game. I was new to RPGs, and so I wasn't familiar with the whole... Well, we have different classes that do different things, so I just used the magic to junction to my characters, essentially pump up their stats. And so I just turned them into behemoths that could just fucking beat stuff in the face. So, went to Final Fantasy VII. Well, it was good. I didn't think it was nearly as good as 8. And then the masterpiece that was 9 came out, and this was, my first real taste of Squaresoft going back to their roots with the medieval themes, because 7 and 8 had been a huge departure where they went sci-fi. So 9 was medieval, and Zidane and crew, and oh my god, that was such a terrific game. I should get it for Android. or I don't know if they have a PC version available. I should get it for that too. It's so good. It's just, the whole idea behind 9 was we're going to go back to our roots. It's the last game on PlayStation. It's the last game before we hit 10. So let's make this one really special. And it was. It was so special. It was one of my favorites. Might be my second favorite Final Fantasy, right behind 8. Very, very close. And then, of course, I went back and played 6, which was on the Super Nintendo. Loved that one to pieces. But I had to play that one through an emulator. Then Final Fantasy X came out. Now, this was the one that it was going to be the next jump forward because it was coming out on PS2. And so I remember always looking at the previews and reading the game magazines. It's like, oh, shit, this looks amazing, because they were show you pictures of, like, Kamala and Lulu and Maka, and it was super colorful, and the characters had so much detail in them, and it was unlike anything we had ever seen before. And so I was really, really stoked for it. And then I played the demo for it, because back then you could get those jam-packed discs, which are essentially a bunch of game demos crammed onto one disc. I remember playing a lot of the original Spider-Man game and Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2 on those. And Medieval and Metal Gear Solid. Oh, man. So much fucking nostalgia for the original PlayStation and those demo discs. But anyhow, I didn't really dig it. Like, the systems were similar enough, but it just, for whatever reason, wasn't hooking me. So I avoided 10. 11 came out, but 11 was online only, and I didn't have, like, we still had dial-up at the time, so playing an MMO was just kind of out of the question. And I remember I had a friend at the time whose dad was, like, really, really into Final Fantasy X. Like, just, it was clearly his favorite game. And the guy and myself, we didn't really get along. And so he had always had problems with managing his money. And in a moment of absolute, just me being a total bastard, I kind of exploited that and bought the game from him and the strategy guide for $25. And so I took away this man's joy. Not even for sake of wanting to play the game, but for just to deal a blow to him, which, again, was a very dickish thing. And so this was around the time then that I was heading off to college, and I went to college in Chicago my first year, lived downtown, not downtown, but in Wrigleyville. So, kid who grew up in farm towns, no more than a population of like 5,000, moving to the fucking city. Had an apartment, and when I wasn't in class, because I was living off my savings, and my mom and dad were helping me with tuition and whatnot, didn't have a job. I was just, kind of living off what I had saved up. And so there were many, many, many days and nights that, again, if I wasn't in class, I was sitting in front of like my PlayStation or wandering around Chicago. And so I finally delved into Final Fantasy X, because if for whatever reason you're not familiar with Final Fantasies or JRPGs in any sense, they are dozens of hours to complete. And that's just like if you want to rush through and beat like the main story. You could literally spend hundreds of hours in this game. And this was before we had like online games and MMOs and continually updated content. So if you were paying, $60 for a game like this, you were getting a lot of bang for your buck. There's just a ton of stuff to do. And so it was perfect that I would sit in my studio apartment and play this new Final Fantasy. And my biggest complaint with it was the character development. I didn't really like many of the characters, if any of them. There were a few who were tolerable, but it was mostly annoying. The story itself took me a few years to appreciate kind of how dark it was, but what won me over was the combat and how the actual gameplay and the sphere system for the abilities. Eventually I came around to it and dug it. It's not anywhere near my top favorites as far as like Final Fantasy games are concerned, but it's a solid entry. I can appreciate what they did. So when X2 came around, the sequel, where essentially you're just playing dress up with the female characters, skip that one. And then Final Fantasy 12 came out. 12 was another PlayStation 2 title where it took a very drastically different approach to the visual style, where it was very Prince of Persia looking, very Middle Eastern, with a dash of medievalness and space pirates. It was very, very weird, but very cool. And that one I still haven't finished. I want to go back and play it. I need to get another PlayStation 2. But it was very political, and the story was kind of boring to follow, so I dropped it. But that one introduced the Gambit system, where characters could, essentially, you would assign, you would build up a series of automated attacks, like if it's late, I'm tired. If this, then that. So you would say, if this happens, then you do this. And you could build up, as you leveled up your characters, you got more available commands. And so you'd build up this fairly in-depth list for each character, like, do all this. And then the characters would kind of fight for themselves. Now, you'd think, well, that's kind of boring. You don't want the game to play itself. But honestly, even if you tried to do everything manually, it would be impossible, because unlike the turn-based fights of the previous games, this one kind of, you had the active battle timer, and so everybody would still be on a timer, but they were all kind of independent, more so than they were in previous titles. So it made it damn near impossible to control all the characters like you would previously, which was fine. I like the Gambit system. And this was something that they carried over into Final Fantasy 13. Now, 13 is by far my least favorite in the series. It's very linear. The game likes to hold your hand, and much like 10, the characters are just unlikable. There's not a single one that, like, oh yeah, this person's kind of cool. Visually, it looks good, but, I always have had a soft spot for Nomura's designs. But the story is a fucking train wreck. It's literally a 25-hour tutorial that you have to play through before you finally get full control of your characters and can access the open world, which isn't all that open. So I got very pissed off. Now, which sucks, because that 13, much like 10, bad characters, terrible story, the combat system is really, really fucking good. It was really intriguing. It played off a lot of Final Fantasy XII's Gambit system, but it was more in depth, where you had different job roles that you could assign characters, and they would have to follow those rules. And some characters could essentially dual spec. So it was really, really cool. But again, just terrible story, terrible characters, and I quit once I got out of the tutorial. Because imagine putting 25 hours into a game only to realize that you just completed the tutorial. It's such a fucking waste of time. It's one of my biggest complaints of Square Enix games now, is that the tutorials are so overly long. They beat it into your head. It's drawn out, and it's misery to play through. Kingdom Hearts 2 had this problem as well. So getting back to my point of Final Fantasy 15 and why it's, why they've lost me, why Square Enix has lost me as a Final Fantasy player. So, when Final Fantasy 13 was announced, there was a sister game that was announced with it called Final Fantasy Versus 13. And the idea was that the two of them were going to be released together. Completely different games, completely different stories, but they were doing something different and unique. And I don't remember the exact reasoning why. But this was 10 years ago that they announced this. Well, for those in the know, or those that, pay attention to this, Final Fantasy 15 just came out this year. So, long development cycles are a thing, yeah, that's fine. But the game went from being called 13, Versus 13 technically, skip 14, because 14 was another online game, all the way up to 15. It was sat in development that long, and jumped a platform entirely, where 13 came out for PS3 and Xbox 360, Versus 13 was supposed to as well, but it got delayed to the point that, one, we're going to move it to the next gen console, and two, we're just going to change the entry number entirely. Now, you'd think, entry number's not a big deal, but I think that really symbolizes the delays that the game itself faced and the problems that it had. To the point where they ended up releasing, 2 full-blown sequels to 13? At least one sequel. But it's fucking ridiculous that you're going to draw this one series out so far instead of focusing your efforts on this game that you promised years and years ago. And I see the same thing happening with Square Enix in the Kingdom Hearts series, where it's been well over a decade since we had a full-fledged entry in the Kingdom Hearts series. The last one was on PS2, and that was just Kingdom Hearts 2. Now, you could argue there have been a lot of entries on mobile for, DS, Game Boy Advance. I think PSP might have had some stuff, but they're essentially all various rehashings of the story, or remasters, or they're about characters that don't really tie into the main story, except they do in a weird way. And so it's just really drug out, and I feel that Square Enix as a company doesn't really focus their efforts where they need to be, as far as, here's our core game, we need to focus on this, we need to get this out on a timely fashion and make sure it's good. Once that's done, we can worry about these side projects a little more. Whereas it seems backwards to them, we can do all this side shit to try and tide people over while we're working on this main game. When the main game comes out, it's still a big old piece of shit, so why do we waste time? And I had heard the reviews for 15 are good, and that Final Fantasy players of past should be able to get into it, as well as it being welcoming to new players. But honestly, I feel like I've been betrayed so much by Square Enix and how they handle their game development and communication with players that, fuck it, I'm okay living in the past with this series and sticking with the titles that I know I'm going to enjoy and can play over and over again. I've got Final Fantasy VIII on my PSP, I've got it on my laptop through Steam, so I can, kind of play it anywhere I want, which is great. And I don't have to worry about getting, wasting money on new titles that aren't gonna necessarily be so good and I can get burned on. So that kind of wraps up my feelings on Final Fantasy. Well, no, because then the mobile apps, Square Enix has this really bad problem of they're really trying to just milk this thing and grab as much cash as they can for as little effort as possible. So I've done a few reviews of the different Final Fantasy apps out there, and some of them are good, but they're all very grindy and they're all designed to take your money. And this latest one, it's just, it's clear that they're not really doing anything innovative or trying to be something different, unique, or even remotely good, because it just steals so heavily from like that Age of Empires. I know it's not Age of Empires, but like Mobile Strike and the fuck is it? Not Rivals. I don't know. You build your town, you harvest the resources, you defend against attackers and things like that. It's just a reskinned game. And it just seems so fucking lazy that you go that route. So, I don't know. I think I'm done with Square Enix. No, so I keep having to put the phone/microphone down here. Ugh. So I can get a drink of what is hopefully going to keep me awake, aside from the talking to you. So, I'd always liked Red Bull as an energy drink. Now, my personal favorite had always been Lost, but they don't make that any longer, which kind of sucks. I've tried a few others, like a NOS, Monster. Essentially, if there's been an energy drink, I've tried it, except for like all the different flavor variations. I've always tried like the core product. Now, I used to drink, excuse me, a lot of them back in the day when we'd have like LAN parties and whatnot. And then too, I just really like the flavor of them. So I used to drink a lot of them, and not so much anymore, except now to get home when I'm driving at, it's now 2 a.m. and I don't want to crash into a cornfield. I have to drink these things and talk to you fine folks. So the problem is that I've realized, energy drinks always have a little bit of a higher price to them. That's just understood. They're cheaper than a can of pop or a bottle of pop, and, like a coffee equivalent. If you're doing like the Starbucks Frappuccino stuff, that stuff's expensive too. Not so much the stuff of, let me just hit the button on the machine or, pour myself a cup of black coffee. And I hadn't really noticed how expensive they were, because I'm buying what I think is a decent size to get me home, and it's upwards of like $5+, which is fucking ridiculous for a drink. It's like, the $5 milkshake from Pulp Fiction. It's just, why would you pay this much for a drink? And so that's when I decided, let's be a smart consumer. Let's be like everybody else and actually do some research and pay attention to what it is we're buying. And so I found that, for the most part, ingredients are near identical between Monster and Red Bull. And for what I pay for an 8-ounce can of Red Bull, I can get a 16-ounce can of Monster. And so it is. It's definitely a little bit of, let me get something new. Sorry, so I'm becoming less coherent here. So it's a thing of, not necessarily that I want something new, because I really like Red Bull, but I can't justify the expense on it. Whereas, the fuck is it? Monster. I'm starting to fade real fast here. Monster has a similar flavor and component buildup. The ingredients list is very similar, but it is half the price. So for what I pay for an 8-ounce can of Red Bull, I get a 16-ounce can of Monster. And granted, I don't need 16 ounces. I could probably suffice with the 8. But honestly, the way my capitalist pig brain starts working is that I'm not getting as much as I could for using my little shovel, which is, me drinking energy drinks. So, despite the what I feel is the preference towards Red Bull. It's too overpriced. So I started, this to be the second week I've used Monster, and I don't know if it's just not as powerful or what the fucking deal is here, but I'm coming into town, so I guess it did its job. But what do we have, 34 minutes? So what I'm probably going to do is stop the recording here soon and record another bit and then edit it all together and put it up in the feed. It might not happen until Saturday, I'm sorry, but if you're listening to this now, you don't know the difference much except that the show is really late. Again, I apologize, I'm just working so much overtime. I literally don't have much free time at all to be doing makeup episodes and things like that. Wednesday night, I know I said I was going to try and record, but I ended up falling asleep. I couldn't stay awake. And of course, Friday, there's just no time. Oh, god damn it. And Saturday, I should have everything up. I have a few hours in the morning that I can get something going. So that's going to do it for tonight. Again, I'm going to edit this all together so you won't have to worry about like, oh shit, is there a next episode? And yeah. So in case I forget to say, tomorrow, just a reminder what my plan is for the Midnight Express is it's going to be a patron only show. You know, you're getting a little bit of a taste of it here, which is, again, it's very similar to the Unwashed Asses, a little more rambly. I'm still trying to find a good format for it, but it's probably going to be a bit more off the cuff, which I don't know how much more off the cuff I can get and technically call it a different show. I think I like more the idea of that I just talk to you guys on a ride home like a trucker. Maybe it's just that, storytelling, or fuck if I know. But, yeah, that's going to be exclusive to the patrons. So, again, head over to patreon.com/009. Sign up, $1 a month, that's all it's going to cost you. Everybody's going to get this first episode for free, just because I'm going to publish it under the Unwashed Asses. But otherwise, Midnight Express is going to be its own separate RSS feed. And again, exclusive to patrons only. So, we'll talk to you tomorrow in the morning, whenever. Well, that didn't really pan out. That, what was it, Thursday night, Friday morning, we recorded the first segment. It is now Sunday. Oh, shit. So, I'm sorry. We're sorry. No, So no, we had work Friday and then Friday night Smite, which went amazing. I highly recommend check out the episode once I get it uploaded to YouTube. Right now it's on Twitch under HFC Gaming. We had a new quiz roll in, tons of fun, good times, a lot of good Overwatch action there. And then Saturday I slept in. I haven't slept in a very long time because I didn't have to go to work. It was amazing. Like, oh shit, I don't have to be up and somewhere. Let's sleep in a little bit. And then I realized, well, there's going to be people coming over here in like an hour, and this place is a disaster because I'd been functioning completely on survival mode. Like, come home, strip down, get a shower, eat, sleep. Like, dishes weren't done. There was clothes strewn everywhere. I had like 2 shirts that were clean. Everything else is like my dirty clothes hamper had grown and turned into this entity. It's like, I live purely on the filth that is built in your clothes. Feed me a kitten. and that it's still that way. I fought it back and scrounged some clothes, but we're gonna have to tackle that beast tonight. And no, then not decided, but we went to the Renaissance Fair Saturday, which then got home late enough. Yawning here that between the sun and the walking around in the heat, it was pooped. All tuckered out. Didn't have a grown up there to carry me on his shoulders and tuck me in bed at the end of the night. Nope, I had to do it all my grown ass self. So I had to re-listen to the first half of the episode because I don't remember what the fuck I was talking about. And holy shit, stuff really kind of went downhill in the second half there. Like getting real tired real fast, and I'm exhausted. There's a sleep debt that's coming due here, and it's gonna hit me like a ton of bricks. You've not slept properly in over a week. Insomniacs mock you, but you will still crash and burn. Take back your sleep schedules, Yes, I know, Bane. I know. Take back my sleep schedule. But, so, I'm debating, and I shouldn't debate because I should have had this decided already. Because I thought I talked about Spider-Man earlier. Clearly did not. And we went to the Renaissance Festival, so it's like, well, shit, which one's more relevant? Which one do you want to hear more about? And it's not like the show's live right now that I can do a poll of the audience. So, shit, fuck. I think Renaissance Fair, that can sit for today's Sunday for a few days. So we'll talk about that Thursday. I got to get the Spider-Man news out before everybody just completely loses interest. And like, Christian, quit talking about shit a month after it happens. We don't care anymore. I know. I feel bad about it. I don't have an active social life. So, Spider-Man. This was Marvel's first chance at getting the character back. Fox... No, not Fox. Fox owns Fantastic Four and X-Men. Sony has Spider-Man. They have the rights to the film, which, for those not in the know, which is surprising, but we're going to derail here a little bit. So, comics have become a big part of the general lexicon. They're definitely more public knowledge, where people know who Thor and Iron Man and Hawkeye and Black Widow are, and it wasn't the case years ago. You're becoming familiar with the major story beats that, Iron Man's an asshole. Thor is in charge of the many different kingdoms, and so on and so forth. Black Widow's a Russian spy who can't have children. And so, as people become more familiar with these, it opens up the ability for them to dig deeper into the series behind it. I love storytelling in any medium, be it comics, movies, games, books, shows, what have you. But I also get a huge kick out of production and the behind-the-scenes stuff. In the case of Marvel, back in the early 90s, they were damn near bankrupt or declaring bankruptcy. No, they weren't declaring it. They were on the verge. And if I'm wrong, please write in, tell me I'm an idiot. But I'm trying to just remember this stuff off the top of my head. So they were selling off the rights to a lot of their properties in different venues. So in the instance of X-Men, those rights went to Fox, who did the cartoon show, and then they did the X-Men movies later. They also got the rights to Fantastic Four, which is why we saw that shitty, just god-awful Fantastic Four preview back in the 90s of a movie that never got released, because they had to show intent that they were going to produce a movie so they could retain rights. It's why Fantastic Four got 2 movies and then a shitty reboot. And it's why Spider-Man has been cranked out left and right with the 3 movies under Sam Raimi and Tobey Maguire. And then we had the Andrew Garfield ones, the 2 there. Because they have to produce X number of movies every so often to retain the licensing rights. Now, in the case of Fox, they've kind of squandered that, and while the first 2 X-Men movies were, pretty universally agreed upon, good. I mean, they redefined and revolutionized the superhero genre. They said, oh, well, we can make this, good again. Kind of like what Iron Man did years later, and then, kind of kicked off the whole MCU. So what happens then is the X-Men series starts to tank. The movies aren't as good, but they still have to keep cranking out the movies to retain the rights. Flip side, what we have on the back end is that Marvel is now, since they're owned by Disney and money's no longer an issue and the MCU is just kicking all kinds of ass, they're very much in a position to want to get their properties back under control. That's why we don't see movies with Spider-Man, or didn't see movies with Spider-Man interacting with the Avengers. That's why we still don't see the X-Men interacting with any other characters. It's why we very likely will never see Deadpool interact with any other Marvel heroes until Marvel gets those rights back from Fox. And with Fox doing home run hits like Logan and Deadpool, they're not as likely to play ball as Sony is. And the problem now comes that with Marvel not having those franchises, they're fighting hard to get them back. To the point where they're trying to drive the licenses into obscurity, but they're stuck. So, on the comic side, they severely cut back the number of comic runs that the heroes themselves are in, and outright replacing the characters. Where Peter Parker was replaced by Miles Morales as Spider-Man, and even to the point of having Dr. Octopus take over Spider-Man's mind and body while Peter Parker was dead. The X-Men have pretty much all but vanished. They're getting replaced by the Inhumans series. And then you have Fantastic Four, which, to my knowledge, hasn't had a comic in a very long time. Because Marvel wants to get the rights back to these movies. And to do that, they have to, drive down popularity so people will go to see the movies. And then Sony and Fox are forced to, give the rights back or sell them back. Well, the problem is, with the MCU, they're leading into this Infinity War event. And recently they had the Civil War event. Spider-Man plays a gigantic role in both of those series. I'm not going to, get into spoilers for each. But what happens is they can't really leave him out. They need him back. And Sony hasn't been doing terribly well in terms of overall profit and ability to generate revenue and income. Sure, PS4 is doing extremely well, but with all the information leaks and then being hacked constantly, as well as several product lines failing, again, I'm not citing sources here, so if you find something, please write it. I'll gladly read it, eat crow, whatever. They decide, well, we can go ahead and partner up with Marvel to get a movie out. It was a huge step forward as far as cooperation and seeing a character essentially come home, which is, tongue-in-cheek why it's called Homecoming. So, Sony still retains movie rights to the character, Marvel gets to use the character in their movies, and now he's integrated into that universe. So here comes in the confusing bit where, before Homecoming is released, they announce that they're going to be shooting a Venom movie, and Venom is by far one of my absolute favorite Marvel heroes, or just favorite heroes, period. He's definitely in that top 5 ever since, the symbiote got introduced to the black suit Spider-Man, all the way through Eddie Brock and, now Flash Thompson doing Agent Venom with the Guardians of the Galaxy. It was just, I currently love the spin out. Like, I hated Flash Thompson and didn't, like, why do you have to shoehorn in every one of Peter Parker's bullies or people who didn't like him into the Venom suit? But for whatever reason, it really worked, and I dug Agent Venom a whole lot. So they announced that they're going to do a Venom movie with Tom Hardy playing, I think he's going to be Eddie Brock. I mean, it makes sense that he'll be Eddie Brock. And the lady in charge of Sony's production says, oh yeah, well now Venom's part of the MCU. To which you would think, oh yeah, well, since Spider-Man's now part of the MCU, clearly any future endeavors with Sony and the Spider-Man universe are going to be tied into the MCU itself. To which Kevin Feige, guy who's in charge of the MCU at Marvel and Disney, says, no. There is now a Venn diagram where you have the MCU as we know it with Captain America, Thor, Iron Man, all those other movies. On the other side, you have the Spider-Man universe, and the only intersection they have is Spider-Man himself inside the MCU movies. And it's going to get messy, because if they do like a Sinister Six movie, or they do Venom, and we see Spider-Man play a part of it, effectively those actions don't really count in the MCU as a whole. Which is dumb. And a lot of people aren't going to realize these differences, and they shouldn't have to, because these characters all share one universe, one home. They should, be able to work together. And so, it's interesting, but at the same time frustrating. And I'm curious to see what people who don't follow this think of it. And do they even care? Things like that. Because I'm now getting exposure to people who haven't been like entrenched in it and just kind of watch the movies here and there and are realizing that, oh shit, I kind of need to watch all of the movies if I want to pick up every hint and reference that they're putting down. It's not necessarily critical to watch or to read the comics to get everything, but we've had so many movies now interwoven and layered with one another that it is like one big continuing story arc that you're going to miss bits and pieces, not necessarily crucial and critical pieces, but you're definitely missing something. So, Spider-Man itself, let me stop right here and just preface all this by saying, spoiler talk, heavily incoming. You might as well just tune out of the rest of the episode, because that's what this is going to be. I'll talk to you on Thursday, and we'll have a good time. We'll talk all sorts of fun stuff. If you have any questions or comments, write the show, theunwashedasses@gmail.com. Again, theunwashedasses@gmail.com. Or Twitter at unwashed_asses. Just drop a line, and we'll have a nice two-way conversation. Okay, everybody gone now? Everybody else who's seen the movie or doesn't care about spoilers still here? Good? Okay. So, Spider-Man Homecoming itself picks up immediately, well, not immediately after, but during his appearance in Civil War, and then following his return home. So, Tony Stark's found this kid who has extraordinary powers. He's created a suit for him, and he's using him as kind of a secret weapon to help take down and capture Captain America and his rogue group of heroes. So we see this kid who's palling around with Jon Favreau's character Happy, Iron Man's number 2 man, the security guard, and I've always liked Happy. He was very much the grounding element to Tony Stark, much like Pepper was, and even Rhodey Rhodes. Essentially anybody who's not Tony Stark. In this movie, though, he's portrayed as kind of a dick, and it's easy to understand why. If you've had to, as an adult, deal with somebody between the ages of, like, 12 and 20, where they are super hyper, abundant amounts of energy, but they can also be very emotionally taxing and draining, annoying, and you're like, shut the fuck up. Stop talking. Leave me alone. Just do what you're told and, shut your mouth. So we see that with Peter, where he's, a 15-year-old kid who has been but given this incredible gift and opportunity, and now he is thrust into a world that he has dreamt of as a kid, because when he was a little kid, the New York event happened where the Avengers had to fight back the invading armies of Thanos and Loki. So he grew up wanting to be a hero, and now he is a hero fighting with and against those people that he looked up to. And so understandably, there's a lot of excitement and energy. So he does the Civil War thing and comes back to America, and is effectively thinking, well, I'm part of the Avengers now, and I'm buddy with Iron Man, who gave me this super kick-ass suit and needed my help, and we're going to keep doing missions and all this other awesome stuff together. And then he's put in a holding pattern. Where Happy is his point of contact. Happy's the man he goes to. Happy's the one who's going to give him his missions and tell him, what to do. And they essentially, because Iron Man does this, Tony Stark does this, he uses people. And so he got his use out of him. He doesn't have any further use. He just wants Spider-Man to kind of stay quiet now. Well, that would work all well and fine, except because the world itself is changing and aliens are a thing and their technology now exists, we have people taking advantage of that. People that are going to thrust Peter Parker and Spider-Man into a light that he's eager to step into, but Tony Stark doesn't necessarily want him stepping into. And that's where we're introduced to the character of the Vulture, played by Michael Keaton, who he is a salvage operator. And during that same battle in New York, he and his crew are set to go in and kind of clean up the scraps and do what they want with them, sell them off, make new stuff. Except the government then steps in the way with the cleanup crew. And are effectively told, I don't care what you paid for, I don't know, it doesn't matter. We're in charge here, get the hell out, give us anything you've ever had. And, it sucks, because the Vulture, I think his name's Graves, he spent a lot of money and time setting this up, because this was going to be his big payday. This is what he'd been looking forward to. He's going to make the most out of what he can. Bad situation, turn it into good. And then he just gets slapped in the face and told, no. Sorry, you're out on your luck. Come to find out, though, they didn't turn in necessarily everything that they had collected. Because, playing to the American everyman who has been cast down and kicked to the dirt and spit on, and it feels like he's taken advantage, like he's owed something. And so they take that one truckload of alien scrap and tech and decide, let's be bad guys. Not necessarily bad guys, even. Just, let's take what's ours. And so with that, he builds the suit that allows him to become the Vulture, and they use the tech to continue robbing shipments of this high-tech equipment to then sell and create weapons, sell and make a nice little profit there. And that's where the intersection comes, that Spider-Man and the Vulture first come into contact, where Vulture is, robbing a shipment, and Spider-Man happens to stumble into it based on a previous interaction he had where the Vulture's goons are selling equipment to other people. And it's happenstance, it's plays out very much like a little detective story as far as piecing the parts of the puzzle together and drawing it all in, all while Peter is going through typical 15-year-old shit. Dealing with his friends and peer pressure and getting bullied and trying to balance the whole with great power comes great responsibility thing. And I'm very grateful that we don't have to get into the storyline of Uncle Ben and how he got his powers and all of that, because by now we know this story. We know exactly how Spider-Man got his powers. We know what happened to Uncle Ben. We know why Aunt May is single and taking care of him. We don't really get a good explanation as to why Aunt May is so ridiculously hot and why Marissa Tomei is just criminally underused in this movie. But for the first time, we see Spider-Man, or Peter Parker, I should say, actually as a kid. With the movies with Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield, he plays, late high school, early college, young adult. And Tobey Maguire itself was, he was much older than he was playing in the role itself, and it didn't necessarily work to his benefit. Andrew Garfield was a lot more believable, but he played like an angrier Peter Parker in Spider-Man than Tobey did. And they were very much tropey love stories with, Maguire being after Mary Jane Watson and Andrew Garfield's being after Gwen Stacy, but it was all about the girl and getting the girl. And I'm going to be honest and upfront here, I hate Mary Jane Watson. I hate her with a passion. She has done more damage to Peter Parker than any other villain he has ever encountered, because if you've delved into the comics themselves, it's always a thing of Peter Parker chasing after her, to the point where they get married and she becomes a model and an actress and is focused very much on her career, and she can't handle him being Spider-Man. They have a kid, and when their child, when she miscarries, she can't come to Peter for comfort. She pushes him away. And it's very much her using him and only, wanting to be with him when it's convenient for her. Whereas Gwen Stacy, in the comics, she's Spider-Man's first love. She was the defining moment that ended the Silver Age of comics when, Green Goblin pushed her off a bridge. Spider-Man went to save her, snagged her with his web, but in doing so, the momentum snapped her neck. This was a huge, tremendous moment. And I liked very much how that was presented, that interaction and that tie between Garfield and, I can't even think of her name, but the girl who played Gwen Stacy in those two movies. Now, the way they handled it in the movies was also frustrating, because it was essentially a big repeating game of, we love each other, we should be with one another. I can't be with you because I'm Spider-Man, your dad warned me, and you're going to get killed by me being with you. And it was a big slap in the face to anybody who knew the story. Like, we know how it's all going to play out. Quit going back and forth with it. And, I don't know, it was just annoying and frustrating. So, we don't have that in this movie. The girl that Peter's interested is named Liz. Her name isn't Mary Jane. He, talks about her to his friend, whose name I don't remember, but the friend plays great comic relief. It's very much, it feels like like an old 80s movie, like Breakfast Club or 16 Candles. It was written by people who know or can at least believably write teenage characters. It didn't feel tropey and full of the same issues that you see in other movies where, like, we're 25 years old and playing teenagers and we're thinking about, the sex and drugs. And no, instead it's, hey, Peter, I'm having a party. Can you come over? Or, hey, Peter, we're sneaking out to go swimming. Come with us. And the peer pressure that comes with that, and with the bully who's constantly putting him down, and just trying to fit in without necessarily having to even worry about Spider-Man, but the whole, how do I integrate with this group of people that I want to call friends? And so it's a wonderfully told two-sided story where we're getting, the Spider-Man side as well as the Peter Parker side. And they're both excellently fleshed out and then come back and are integrated together. When we find out that, Liz, the girl that Peter Parker's interested in, is taking to homecoming dance, also happens to be the daughter of the Vulture and Michael Keaton. And this is the defining moment in the movie where Peter Parker had lost, in chasing down the Vulture and his crew and trying to stop a sail, it led him to a ferry that was ultimately destroyed by the ensuing battle. And in doing so, he had drawn the attention of Iron Man, who told him to stay out of the limelight, who Peter had tried to warn Iron Man, saying, hey, this shit's going on, you gotta stay on top of it, you gotta take care of it. And to Peter's perspective, Iron Man ignored it. Iron Man's side, he sent in, government agents to take care of it because he thought it was small fry stuff. So when Peter sneaks behind Tony's back and does what he explicitly told him not to, Iron Man gets understandably frustrated and upset and takes away the suit that he had made for Peter. So Peter's already feeling a very huge blow. He's a gigantic science buff. The school he's going to is just for, scientifically minded youth. And he looks up to Tony and Iron Man in, a few different facets, where there's one, the scientist, the brilliant designer and engineer who created all this wonderful technology. And then there's the superhero, the man that he aspires to be like as a hero himself. And to have him slap him down, and, one with repeatedly ignoring him and not guiding him or giving him the proper attention. And then two, to take away the very gift that he had given him. It's a huge blow. It would be to anybody, let alone a 15-year-old who's going to take it that much harder. So we have a defeated Peter Parker who's already feeling kind of down and low, who's getting back into merging with his peers and his school life, and well, if I lost this, I can focus on this. He's trying to make the most of the situation still. To then, ask out and get the date with the girl of his dreams, and when you go to pick her up, you find out that she's the daughter of essentially your arch nemesis at that point, the one guy who you've been chasing. What do you do? Well, unfortunately for Peter, the situation changes because the Vulture very quickly realizes who Peter is and pieces it together that he is Spider-Man. So Keaton he steals the movie, each and every scene he's in. The facial expressions, the change in his tone, how he talks to Peter and talks to his hired goons and things like that. He is by far the most fleshed out and fully realized Marvel villain we've had thus far, whereas Ronan was just, I'm going to destroy these people because I'm a racist. Thanos, I'm going to kill all these people because I'm in love with death. Loki, I want power because I have always been denied power. The Vulture's just a guy who's trying to make his way, trying to take care of his family. He's not necessarily doing criminal activities in the sense that, murder and rape. He's doing theft, larceny. But he's trying to stay under the radar. He's picking at the scraps. He's doing Vulture things. He has very genuine, real reasons for doing what he does. And it's clearly shown in this interaction where they're sitting in the car together, and he pulls a gun and says, if this were effectively any other universe, I would be a tremendous fan. You saved my daughter's life. She looks up to you immensely, both as Spider-Man and as Peter Parker. But you're fucking with my shit, kid. I've got a business to run, I got a family to take care of, and you can't keep fucking with me. If you do, I will kill you, and I will kill everyone you love. And it's another big slap in the face to Peter, who, he's lost his suit. He's lost his hero. And now he has to bring down, the girl who he's very much interested in. He has to bring down her father. And so he's faced with a choice, He has to ignore, essentially, the demands of Tony Stark to keep pursuing the guy who also knows who he is and has demanded, stay the fuck away from me or I will kill you. And it's a hard moment. But, that's kind of how Spider-Man's always been done, where he's faced with the impossible and still has to find a way to rise above it. He always gets the shit end of the stick and still finds a way to pull himself up. And ultimately, that's what he does here. He overcomes the odds. Without his suit, without any help, he manages to take down the Vulture and save the day, which coincidentally also saves a lot of Tony Stark's stuff, which gets him back in good graces, gets him his suit back, gets him on the Avengers fully fledged and ready for a sequel. Now, I'm gonna be honest, it's one of, if not the best Marvel movies that have come out. Now, it's hard for me to give it top billing. It really is, because I have a gigantic love affair with the Guardians of the Galaxy. Because I've been so sorely disappointed with Star Wars movies since Episode 7's come out, and we have Guardians of the Galaxy doing Star Wars movies without calling it Star Wars. I dig it. I'm in love. It's going to be really hard to knock them off the top of that mountain. But Spider-Man comes so close. I'm torn. I really am. It's such a good movie. The way it's shot, and the writing is so clever and witty and hilarious in moments, and the characters themselves are real and genuine, and it's very easy to lose yourself in this world. Much easier than it is in, Captain America, the first Avenger, or even Iron Man, where we have these people that have these tremendous powers and gifts, but they're not necessarily relatable. Whereas we've all been that 15-year-old kid who's been awkward around your crush, or had to deal with a guy who's just a complete dick to you for no real reason in high school. Or, going to a party and just being awkward. It's relatable on that level. And then we still get the power fantasy of, what would we do in that situation? How would we handle ourselves if given the opportunity? And it's Spider-Man done in a way that he hasn't been done in a very long time. Now, unlike a lot of other people, I like the Andrew Garfield movies. I liked one that we got away from Mary Jane. And Gwen Stacy, she's the right one for Peter. They need to be together. But it was a different take on him. He was angrier. He was not necessarily darker, but he was very much frustrated and willing to give in to that anger. And they were building up a universe where, we were going to get a Sinister Six movie. So I am a bit saddened that we didn't get to explore that universe, but at the same time, Tom Holland and the way he portrayed Spider-Man and the way the Marvel handled the entire movie and setup, it's fantastic. They have yet to produce a movie that's been an absolute flop or something that I couldn't stand. So they've won my trust. I have to keep placing it in them. And it's disheartening to see that Sony isn't willing to play ball. Now, I understand from their point of view where we need to hold on to the things that make us money. They're not in the business of losing money. So they're going to hold on to Spider-Man until it's just not financially viable anymore. But it's good to see them playing well with Marvel and saying, okay, well, let's hold hands. We'll do this together, and everybody's going to come out ahead. And so if Spider-Man can do it, I definitely hope that we can see Fox kind of come along to see the light, so to speak. And we can get Deadpool mixing it up with the Avengers and Spider-Man. Because, again, for those not in the know, those that don't follow the comics, Deadpool has a tremendous crush on Spider-Man. He loves him to pieces. And I would love to see Ryan Reynolds interact with Tom Holland in that way. I would love to see Wolverine, team up with Captain America because, they fought in World War II together. Or see Deadpool even interact with Captain America because he was a tremendous hero to him. He was the inspiration to get into the Weapon X program and get powers. I want to see those universes collide. And it all comes down to corporations and money and why they haven't. So, it's a longer episode this time. I'm sorry. Again, it's late, too. I'm sorry for that. I'm going to apologize for a lot. But Thursday, we'll just wait and see. The overtime gods may come calling for me again. They probably will. But we'll make it work. We'll get a show out. We'll have a good time. Again, please remember, the month's almost over. Head over to podcastawards.com. Register your email. Go ahead and vote. Pick the Unwashed Asses in the mature category. I know I haven't looked in a few weeks. I probably should. But we're definitely coming to an end here as far as nominations. And I need all the help I can get to get this show an award. So I can't do it without you. Please. Again, podcastawards.com. Otherwise, we will see you in a few days.
I can feel the end, it's drawing near. It will soon be here. Oh, that much is clear. So shut the doors and turn off the lights. Let us sleep tonight. Let us huddle in the dark. Oh, my lover, you are beautiful. But that beauty comes at such a price. And I know that you'll soon disappear. Like the dark and the night.